Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
And we're back here on the Patrick Riggins Show. Starting off with a little Tool on the bumper music. President Obama has been touting his universal background checks, which ties in with the rest of this show today, as one of the key ways to eliminate gun violence. Even his stooges from Sandy Hook, those traitors trying to lobby Congress, they believe in them. But they are wrong, as evidenced by a column in Reason magazine this month. Now, this column was written by Jacob Solomon and starts out, to make sure those who would commit acts of violence cannot get access to guns, President Obama said in January Congress should mandate background checks not just for sales by federally licensed firearms dealers, as the current law requires, but for all gun transfers except those between relatives. This idea seems to be the most popular of Obama's gun control proposals, backed by 92% of respondents in a mid-January CBS News poll. Yet, universal background checks are unlikely to stop mass shootings, and enforcing them would require the sort of surveillance that has long been anathema to defenders of the Second Amendment, exposing millions of peaceful people to the threat of gun confiscation and criminal prosecution. Although an expanded background check requirement is ostensibly a response to the December 14th massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, it would not have stopped the gunman in that attack. Exactly, who used his mother's firearms. Even if he had tried to buy guns, it seems he would have passed a background check because he did not have a disqualifying criminal or psychiatric record. That is typically the case in mass shootings, observes Northeastern University criminologist James Allen Fox. And if they could not pass a background check, Fox says, mass killers could always find an alternative way of securing the needed weaponry, even if they had to steal from family members or friends. No. Meanwhile, to make sure that every gun buyer undergoes a background check, the government would need to know where all the guns are. Although Obama did not mention that little detail, the Washington Post reported that the administration was seriously considering creating a system that would track the movement and sale of weapons through a national database. Second Amendment supporters historically have opposed gun registration, fearing it could lead to confiscation, which has happened in places such as Canada, Great Britain, Australia, California, and New York City. While wholesale disarmament would be clearly unconstitutional in this country, confiscation of guns that legislators arbitrarily deem unnecessary or excessively dangerous is easier to imagine, especially given Obama's support for new, stricter ban on assault weapons. If fear of confiscation seems paranoid to you, consider what would happen if the federal government, merely enforcing existing law through expanded background checks and improved records, another step nearly everyone seems to think is self-evidently sensible, such a crackdown would reveal the folly of current restrictions, which would prohibit gun ownership by several absurdly broad categories of people under the threat of a 5-year prison term. One disqualifier is a felony record, whether or not the offense involved violence or even a victim. It is doubtful that check kiters, pot growers, or unauthorized farm workers, another banned category, are more likely to go on a shooting rampage than the average person. Federal law also bars, quote, an unlawful user of any controlled substance from owning a gun. In the column, he says, think about that for a moment. If you smoke pot or use a relative's Vicodin or Xanax, you have no right to keep and bear arms. Survey data indicate that nearly 40 million Americans have used illicit drugs in the last year. And the true number is probably higher, since people may be reluctant to admit illegal behavior. One of Obama's common sense steps And he says that quite a bit. To reduce gun violence is better sharing of data by federal agencies, including lists of employees or job applicants who have failed drug tests. So just applying for a job and failing the drug test, now you're in somebody's database. Seeking such information from state agencies and private employers seems equally logical. This is one of those situations where, quote, better could be worse. Although better enforcement of existing restrictions on gun ownership seem unobjectionable, it would unjustly deny millions of people the right to armed self-defense. A follow-up to this article is the appearance of Senator Ted Cruz on Sean Hannity's show on April 10th, where Senator Cruz stated, "We should be focusing on violent criminals, and that has not been Obama Justice Department's priority. In 2010, there were over 15,000 felons and fugitives who tried illegally to purchase firearms. Of those 15,000, the Obama Justice Department prosecuted just 44. Now, the fact checkers over at Washington Post found that the senator did get one of those sets of numbers wrong. In 2010, the number of felons and fugitives denied a firearm was actually 48,000, not 15,000. But the number of prosecutions he cited, 44, was right on the nose. That's out of nearly 73,000 total denials for a variety of reasons by the FBI. Of course, they ran to get the numbers of the Bush administration on to find that they had done marginally more, but still about the same percentage-wise. Of course, that doesn't make Obama's behavior any more acceptable. It's funny how liberals do this. Bush did it, so you can't say anything. Like if Obama's taking away our rights and Bush did as well, then all of a sudden it's okay. So just a little something when they're yelling about those background checks.
Bush did it first.
Bush did it, so we can do it
first.
Yeah. Real quick, too, I want to hit this before we end the show. Hours after Republican colleagues in the House called for President Obama to crack down on legal marijuana in Colorado and Washington, Representative Dan Rohrabacher in California, he's a Republican, introduced H.R. 1523, a bill that would immunize from federal prosecution individual marijuana consumers as well as medical and non-medical marijuana businesses operating in states in which they are legal. I wanted to get that in real quick. That is a little federal statute they're trying to get through, that if your state says it's okay, the feds can't come in and tell you it's not. And that's the way it should be. States'
They pretty much knew about that going in, I think, though, too. So that was...
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Because the feds was going to say that they were going to do something, but really, state level, I believe the state...
well, because the feds, they own us all. States are just administrative. They look at them just as administrative people for federal law. Anyway, we're up on the last of the Patrick Riggin Show. It's been a full action-packed show. If you want more information about us, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Patrick Riggin Show. That's Riggins. That's how you spell Riggins, not Patrick. Patrick Riggin Show. And be sure and hit that like button. Really? Yeah, exactly. You can also go to youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show. youtube.com/Patrick Riggin Show. And you can drop us a card or letter if you want via U.S. mail here at WNOX on Kingston Pike. Oh, if you want to email us, same thing, patrickriggenshow@gmail.com. Pretty simple. Get hold of us. Anyway, join me next Sunday afternoon where once again, hey, we'll talk about freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. This is Patrick Riggins, and we'll see you next Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Have a fantastic week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on The Patrick Riggin Show. Every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. Be there.